Hello, and many thanks for joining us on the program. I am Imonia Marere. The last 1 month or thereabout has witnessed a lot of legal and verbal fireworks over who, between the federal government and state governments, has the constitutional backing to collect value-added tax, VAT, and personal income tax, PIT. The Rivers State government had gotten the nod of a high court, a federal high court in Port Harcourt, to collect VAT and PIT. This was after the state legislature had enacted a law to that effect. Justice Stephen Dahlia Palm, who heads the suit, ruled on August 9 that the federal government's continued collection of VAT and PIT through the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS, negates the spirit of the federal system of government which Nigeria claims to operate. The court upheld this position almost a month later, that was on September 7th, when it ruled on a stay of execution brought by the FIRS. Now, in between the FIRS, in a letter is sent to the National Assembly, and in his bid to retain the collection of VAT, wrote to the National Assembly to include VAT collection in the exclusive legislative list. It specifically asked that it should be inserted in item 58 of the exclusive legislative list. But on Friday last week, that was on September 10, the Court of Appeal in Abuja granted a stay of execution of the Federal High Court order while ordering the parties to maintain the status quo. Now, incidentally, that same day, Lagos State also signed into law a bill empowering it to collect VAT, just like Rivers State did. VAT or VAT is a consumption tax paid when goods are purchased and services are rendered in Nigeria. It is at the moment at a rate of 7.5%. Now, it was introduced by the federal government in 1993 through the VAT Decree 102. It became effective in January 1994. The law requires manufacturers, importers, suppliers, and wholesalers of vatable goods and services to be registered within 6 months of commencement of business and remit proceeds to government. As a source of revenue, it brings into federal, state, and local government council coffers about 1.5 trillion naira every year. However, its allocation and distribution to the 3 tiers of government have always been a source of disagreement and friction. For some, the distribution pattern has been unjust and unfair, especially to states that contribute the most to this revenue stream. And against the backdrop of the loud calls and agitations for a re-engineered or a restructured federal system, it is not a surprise that the current controversy is playing into the scheme of what is described as true federalism or fiscal federalism. That is a situation where the subnationals have a lot more control over their affairs, including their resources, than they currently do in the prevailing setup in Nigeria. Now, given that a number of other states have indicated that they may consider following in the footsteps of Rivers and Lagos states in enacting their own tax laws, which could effectively decentralize the collection of VAT, will it signal yet another effort at a comprehensive reform of the Nigerian federal system and the expediency of a restructuring? Who could be the ultimate beneficiary of a decentralized VAT collection? Is this likely to bring about a more workable fiscal system in Nigeria, or could it prove more disruptive in the end? Well, we have assembled a team of experts in taxation, law, and in economics to examine the issues that are daily being thrown up by this, well, what we choose to call the VAT war. We shall meet our panelists right after this time out. Stay with us. All right, let's get to meet our guest analyst. With me in the studio is Mr. Kennedy Iwundu. Mr. Iwundu is the Vice Chairman, Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, CITN, of the Abuja chapter. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Iwundu. Thank you for having me. Thank you. All right. Mr. Iwundu, of course, is a chartered taxation expert. And we are also joined all the way from Calabar in Cross River State, Mr. Leonard Ayongo. Mr. Ayongo is a lawyer. And also joining us from Lagos is Dr. Ken Koha. He's a lawyer and an economist. And of course, he is also the president, National Association of Nigerian Traders, NANTS. They are both joining us virtually. Mr. Ayongo from Calabar and Mr. Koha from Lagos. Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you
for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. Right, so let's begin by asking this question, Mr. Iwundu. What is the nature of the debate around VAT collection at the moment? If you were to describe what is actually going on right now, this debate, what we choose to call the VAT war right now, what is the nature of this debate or the nature of this war?
The nature of the war is about the fight for fiscal federalism. We have proposed for fiscal federalism for the country long before now, where we allow states to become independent from the federal when it comes to revenue allocation and also in expenditure. Right now, the 36 states of the federation are depending on the federal government on monthly allocation before they can do anything. Some states cannot even pay salaries and wages except the federal government give the allocation and they can start paying. So we feel that that's not good for the country called federation. We should restructure a country where the 36 states on their own can independently collect their resources internally, run their state without depending on the federal. So this is exactly where we are now. And why it looks like a war is because it has some constitutional lacuna in the sense that VAT and withholding taxes, we call them transaction taxes, are not in any way mentioned in the Constitution. That is exactly why it's where we are. If you look at the Constitution, the transaction taxes, we call them transaction taxes because these are taxes people pay in the course of transactions. Either you're buying or you're selling, you'll be involved in either withholding tax or VAT. Now, these transaction taxes were nowhere mentioned in the Constitution. In as much as we have the exclusive list, the concurrent list, the residual list, nowhere it was mentioned. Probably the drafters of the Constitution never knew that these transaction taxes could be a good mine in the future in terms of revenue generation. So either inadvertently or whatever, or as at that time, the issue of transaction taxes has not become in vogue. So at the end of the day, they were not mentioned in the Constitution. Now it was not mentioned. The question is, is the court going to declare the collection invalid or null and void, or is the court going to declare who is to collect these transaction taxes? Because right now, it is clear that Federal Land Revenue Service is supposed to collect the transaction taxes because it's not mentioned in the exclusive list. But FIRS argument is not mentioned in the concurrent list. It's not mentioned in the residual list. So it wasn't mentioned in the Constitution.
So it's not anywhere.
It wasn't mentioned in the Constitution.
But the FRS seem to be relying on Decree 102 of 1993.
Yes.
Which created
yes.
VAT.
Exactly. But that decree, which later became Value Added Tax Act, and Value Added Tax Act 2004 as amended, is where FRS relying to collect the VAT, because that act empowers FRS to collect VAT. But the analysts are saying that if the Constitution did not say FRS should collect VAT, an act of National Assembly has no power to say FRS should collect VAT. So, because the act of National Assembly cannot be inconsistent with the provision of the Constitution. That's exactly. The Value Added Tax Act is still valid. The contention is who is to collect. No court has nullified the Value Added Tax Act, but the court has only nullified the man who is to collect the VAT.
Okay. Dr. Okoha, let me turn to you, and let me put the question in a different way. What, for you as a lawyer and an economist, what is this whole war, this whole debate about VAT? What is it really about? What is it really about for you? Hello, Dr. Okoha, can you hear us?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, the network is bad, but I think we can manage this discussion. If you're hearing me, if you're getting me, I think my starting point would be to really hail the development, hail it in the sense that VAT and the current, judicial exercise surrounding the VAT and what decisions Rivers and Lagos have taken as an express way to true regionalism, true federalism that we have been, seeking, as well as fiscal federalism, essentially. And then is a gateway for me to the restructuring that a lot of people have been clamoring for. And therefore, in this respect, and to the extent that this has been taken on board through a legal means, through a judicial process, I think is a healthy development. I, however, would have wanted to point out that dialogue ought to have been explored and perhaps exhausted. Unfortunately, I did not see this happen. And, before heading to the courts. And one other thing also that baffles some of the observers is that, in this regard, on this subject matter, FIRS is an agent. And one wonders why it appears that the tail is wagging the dog. FRS is now heading to court with the state governments instead of the federal government, having this discussion. We have the Attorney General of the Federation, who, in my opinion, ought to have taken up the matter ab initio and not allowing the agents in this at this point to head on with the matter. But I think that some level of dialogue will also need to come in. The third point for me, economically, is for us to now begin to also explore and interrogate, essentially, the implications of whatever the judgment would end up being on the private sector, and which is the core, beacon of the economy. in terms of the result of all of this on multiple taxation and multiple burden of taxes on the shoulders of the private sector, and then the dwindling economy as well. And given also the sense that your question arises on the economy from the economic end. Today we have prices of goods and commodities skyrocketing, and the purchasing power of the average Nigerian is getting low, especially within the circle of the poor. Now, what will be the implications of leaving VAT in the hands of the states? And this is what I am expressing as a private sector operator as well, where you see today, from one local government to another, you see men in uniform, sometimes behaving like vagabonds, all in the name of tax collectors. And this increases latently the price of goods, the price of commodities, and sometimes the price of services, to the point that transporters who are, service providers to the, traders and all of that are also affected. So what will be the end point of this when this, when the VAT power goes to the states? Of course, this is a welcome development in an angle where you have the IGR of the states, going up. But again, on the other hand, why considering the implications of the private sector, considering also the implications of this on the average Nigerian, the poor, we must also consider the implications of all of this on our unity as a country. And this is very, very important. And that's why I feel that despite all what the courts will end up coming up, I mean, perhaps at the end of the Supreme Court, where I believe this is heading to, whatever pronouncement comes up, there must also be a point where all the parties will need to sit on the table. And I think Mr. President should be challenged to call for a meeting. In fact, the Economic Council should also have been sitting on this matter, over this matter, by now, so as to see ways of mediating, so that so that the challenges will not overwhelm. And I'll give you one instance, and before I just drop now. If you take a look at the subject of VAT, VAT is looking at consumption, is a consumption tax. But you also look at it from the angle that goods that are produced from one state moving to another state where it is finally going to be consumed are also undergoing, or may also undergo, tax. So how do you differentiate all of this? So if you end up taxing the producer at one end, for instance, the brewery that produces in Lagos, and the whole product is going, I mean, some of the products are going to Enugu, for instance, or going to Adamawa, or going to Kogi State. At the end there, the VAT will also be charged. So it amounts to doubling, if not multiplication, of that kind of taxation on the people. So I think that these are things that would also need to be streamlined. The law is there, yes, but the economic sense of it must be looked into, and as well as the political end, so that it is not going to pitch, VAT will not pitch, the South and the North poles, at war with each other. I think I need to stop here at this point.
All right, Dr. Ukoha, thank you so much. You have put a lot on our table to chew. But let me quickly go to Mr. Ayongo. Mr. Ayongo, I mean, the history of revenue allocation in Nigeria has always been a one-sided one. It's all about the distribution of resources, distribution. Nobody places so much emphasis on the production of these resources before they are distributed. The sharing formula is always the one that is talked about all the time. Nobody talks about the production formula and all of that. And this VAT issue has also keyed into that prism, as it were. Now, so for you, do you think that the current debate will in any way, the current war or crisis over VAT will in any way fundamentally change the operating system in Nigeria today, revenue sharing or revenue allocation system in Nigeria today?
Thank you for having me. I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, that's fine, because the audio this way has been poor. Thank you for having me once again. VAT is a consumption tax. Straight to your question, over the years, the 3 tiers of government, all they are interested, have been interested in is get this money, share this money, and the productivity level is to the greatest respect in some of the states and the local government is near zero. People just wait for end of the month to share revenue. So, I mean, the VAT war, in quote, is a very good development for me and to a greater percentage of Nigerians, because now we're not looking at productivity of each state, because it doesn't make any economic sense for state A to produce more, I mean, in terms of consumption, and then state B, C, we just want to come and share what state A and B, state A is producing. So it calls for an economic introspection by all the states to look inward and see how they can generate and make their internally generated revenue come up, rather than every month you go to Abuja to share this revenue. But having said that, let me quickly say that the VAT Act of 1993, it was actually a decree, but now it's an act. And of course, the tax laws have been passed by Lagos State and River State, and I know that so other states will join. It's a development that other states will definitely join. To me, it's a good development. Why do I say it's a good development? Now, basically, VAT is a consumption tax. State A, I don't want to start calling states name by name, but if state A consume more tax, produce more tax by virtue of their consumption, it behoves on such state to take the benefit of such consumption rather than taking everything to the center and redistributing it. But I'm trying to be very careful, because this matter is before the court. The Court of Appeal is still sitting on this matter, just like my colleague in Lagos said. I see that this matter will definitely end at the Supreme Court. So now, the basic thing is that the states are not being agitated, because we're supposed to be practicing federalism. I said supposed to, in quote, because the tenet of true federalism is for the states to develop at its own pace. But now you want to take one state you hold one state down so that the other state will come and meet up. You know, so it will call for an economic introspection for states now to be more creative on how to generate revenue. And I want to align myself to the fact that this is the time that both the federal government and the state government will come to a round table and talk. Because at the end of the day, I'm not prejudging this, but if the Supreme Court take the decision one way or the other, either it's the state that will collect or the federal that will collect, bad blood will naturally come. We're a country of suspicion. It seems that some part of the country now favor VAT collection, some don't favor VAT collection. So you can see the intrigues. So at the end of the day, we might have to sit at the round table and take a conclusive look at this. Now, if I'm going to do a further suggestion, it would be that if state A is producing so much or consuming so much and contributing so much to the center, it could be a political situation that state A should keep about 50% or even more of that consumption, because some states virtually produce nothing. And it is so because at the end of every month, everybody goes to Abuja to share federal allocation. And if we do that, we're not going to have the kind of federalism that it is envisaged. I think The VAT war, in quote, or the VAT controversies or issues that is now before the court, hopefully the court will resolve it in one way that is pleasing to everybody. But then it calls for, the word I've been choosing is economic introspection. Let the state now be creative in their own, in how to generate their internal revenue. Let me stop at this point.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Ayongo. Dr. Ewundu,
Yeah.
a lot is on the table right now.
Yeah.
First from Dr. Okoha, who talked about prospects of double and even multiple taxation.
Yeah.
But again, I also want to come back to the whole issue of the generation, or what some would call production. The emphasis on distribution rather than the production of our resources has been a major problem with us in Nigeria from independence. We are too concerned about how much we share. We are not very concerned about how much we produce.
Okay, I want to say something. You know, in this country, some states are agriculturally inclined. Many states are agriculturally inclined. They are not into production. They are not industrialized like Lagos and some other places like that. So states that are agriculturally, inclined, we have less VAT to collect because agricultural products are exempted from VAT. We should know that. If a state is agriculturally inclined, farming, they will have little or no VAT to collect because most of the agricultural product will be moved to states that we process it. And the states that we process it will be the state that will collect the VAT.
But then those states can then begin to think of
Thank you very much.
putting in place production
That is why
processes.
it is that
rather
beholds
than just exporting from
exactly.
their states the raw materials.
You are getting it now. It beholds to the governors of the states that are agriculturally inclined to begin to put up industries, to bring in private sectors that put up industries that will start processing those agricultural products so that they can start collecting VAT. Because right now, agricultural services, agricultural products are exempted from VAT. So you cannot be producing agricultural product and be sending to another state that will be collecting the VAT. So this is, the VAT war has bring about the thinking cap. Governors should start thinking, how do we industrialize our state that are as agricultural state? How do we commercialize our state? That's number one. Then number two, there's confusion. People are confused. Why would somebody go to Kano, for example, and purchase something and suffer an input VAT, and go to Lagos and sell and talk about output VAT? What of the input VAT he has suffered in Kano? How do we use it to offset the output VAT in Lagos? It's very simple. If the VAT war is over, we can have a law, a policy whereby wherever you suffer input VAT, as far as you have evidence of it, it can be used to offset your output VAT in any other part of the country. That is it. It's very clear. If I suffer an input VAT in Sokoto and I'm to have an output VAT to pay in Kebbi, I can bring evidence of it and the VAT can be done where it can be accepted. Then another one is the issue of collection. We don't know where it is going to, the court dispute is going to end. If eventually at the end of the day, they say states collect the VAT, one of the major reasons why Federal Revenue Service is collecting VAT for states is because many states lack the administrative efficiency to collect VAT. Many states lack the capacity to collect taxes. We have situations where even on personal income taxes, many states cannot collect. We have a situation where even personal income taxes, states cannot collect. So this is where FRS comes in, where a state is administrative inefficient to collect this tax, that state can hire FRS as a consultant to collect the tax, the VAT. And FRS will still retain their 4% cost of collection. It is simple. Where they say states should collect, FRS can be deployed as consultant to states, where FRS will collect the VAT for the states and still collect their 4% cost of collection. And where FRS is involved in collecting the VAT in 36 states for each state, it can also solve the problem of input, output, VAT, because FRS will be involved to do the VAT audit, they will be involved to do the VAT verification.
So, in other words, what you are suggesting that if at the end of the day, the states become the beneficiaries of this whole process, even the FIRS is not locked out completely.
It's
They
not locked
could
out completely
actually
because
be offering consultancy services
exactly
to all the states.
because right now FRS have the data. FRS have the data. The states don't have the capacity. They don't have the capacity. So even if at the end of the day, the court says states collect, the only thing they would do is to bring FRS as a consultant to collect for them. So that FRS will end up doing the collection and also collect their 4% cost of collection. At the end of the day, FRS has nothing to lose.
Dr. Okoha, this is getting more interesting. Now, the argument that the FRS has put up in recent times is the fact that the bulk of VAT revenue actually comes from imports, and the federal government, ministries, departments, and agencies, contractors who do work in these areas, and that the bulk of VAT revenue in the country today comes from this area. And as such, the states don't have, do not have any ports. They do not collect any import tax and all of that, where the bulk of VAT comes from. So one begins to wonder why the FIRS is in fact fighting this, because at the end of the day, they might just be the major beneficiary of this whole process.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now, you see, like I was saying, it's becoming quite interesting, and that's why some of us like what is happening. The only caution that we, somebody like me, is putting on the table is that we need to be a bit more diplomatic and cautious in the approach. First is that the approach of going to court is quite fantastic. And I think that this will also lead a process where you will now see other things coming on the table. For instance, stamp duty has been taken along now gradually into the matter. And I am also very, very, confident that very soon you will see other things that have been in the exclusive list now getting on board, to be unbundled and then taken from there to maybe the concurrent issues like power, so that power can be unbundled. Issues like railway, and issues like aviation. So gradually, some of these things will be coming up. And if this process comes to fruition, what we will be seeing at the end of the day is a restructured economy, a restructured Nigeria. Exactly the answer we were trying to get from the back door of political actors. And, everybody will be brought on their knees. And Nigerians will be better off for it, and there will be development. However, I think that this must follow some level of dialogue. Why the courts, the judicial system is handling the matter, and that's why I'm being careful, and I'm happy my two other colleagues there here are also careful, so that we don't, enroll ourselves into the subjudicial nature of the process, because, like we have said, this matter will end up with the Supreme Court. And we will need to perhaps get ourselves, restricted to the economic angle, so to speak. Now, one question that, is pulling my mind is the subject of what would these funds that the state governments are looking at in terms of portfolio increase, in terms of IGR increase, what would they be meant for? Would they target development, infrastructure development in their states, or would they be feeding more into the looting arena, where the pockets of the states would be made to become larger, and then the politicians will be feeding fatter on the pocket? That's a question. Second question would be, if at the end of the day, the Supreme Court or whatever, I mean, the process ends up with, the states given the powers to show that this responsibility of collecting VAT and all of this. Would the local governments also be beneficiaries of such, and to what extent? Because we've been looking at local government, autonomy for a long time, and the states, governors who, majority of them who are like emperors, have always matched their feet against this. What will be the benefit of all of this to the local governments and to the citizens, to the poor, and to the rural communities? Number three, what will also be the benefit of this to the private sector? Would the governors now increase investment in industries? I can tell you, look at states like Abia State. I want to be very blunt at this time. States like Abia State, where you have a lot of productivity, a lot of SMEs. In fact, Abia State takes a chunk of almost 41% of the standing SMEs in terms of productivity in the whole country. But infrastructure-wise, Abia State's infrastructure is dilapidated. Come to think of roads, power everywhere, everything. Now, what will be the end of this? What will be the impacts from the governors, from the governments of the states and the local governments?
Okay.
And if you look at Plateau State, for instance, in the 70s and early 80s, you had a lot of factories in that particular state. The NASCO biscuits of this world, the Empire Carpets of this world, a lot of them, all of them have turned into church buildings. Many of the warehouses are now church buildings. And, what is going to be we have been in a political dispensation, democratic dispensation since 1999. And one would have thought that by now, these factories would have been resuscitated. None of them has been. None of them has been resuscitated. In fact, we are growing from bad to worse. And unemployment keeps increasing. So what is going to be the role of the governors and that of the VAT increase in the pockets of the government, in resuscitating industries, in creating jobs, and in ensuring that investments are attracted in their domain, so as also to increase the latency for more tax to be collected? And I think that this is a lesson that must be looked at. On the other side is also a role for civil society and the citizens themselves. If at the end of the day that this comes to fruition and the states have this in their powers to collect VAT, what is the monitoring mechanism to ensure that we are not looted and relooted and looted dry?
All right. Dr. Ogoha,
I think we need to wake up. Thank you very much.
Yes, you have put so many issues forward now for us to look at within the limited time we have. And one of such issues which I also wanted to take up with you is whether or not this whole debate, these whole disagreements now, whether it will impact negatively or positively on foreign investments in the Nigerian society generally. But let's talk to Mr. Ayongo first. Mr. Ayongo, Dr.
But it's true. It is going to impact negatively on foreign direct investments because we are talking about investment attraction, the environment. When there is multiple taxation, when there is no feasibility, when everything looks unpredictable in the environment, the business environment, of course, you can understand that foreign investors, even local investors, begin to dim.
Okay. Well, yes, thank you so much. Mr. Ayongo, let's explore further some of the issues that Dr. Okoha has put on the table, which is, for instance, if at the end of the day, there is a decision as to the decentralization of the collection of VAT, that is empowering the states to collect VAT. Now, how is this likely to peter down to the local governments. And like Dr. Nwundu said, whether or not the states have the structures to collect these tax. Now, is there a possibility that at the end of the day, local governments themselves will begin to agitate for some level of independence or some level of decentralization for them to also collect VAT at their local government level?
Well, I hope we can. I hope I have audio in the studio.
We can hear you.
Okay, fine. To me, the local government system that I've been very vocal about in recent years has been the most bastardized in terms of its finances. And I keep saying that if we get the local government system right, the issue of insecurity, economic downturn of the country will be greatly reduced. Why do I say so? Because all of us come from the local government system. It's the local government system that's actually the bedrock before the state emanates, and then of course the center. As presently constituted, the center is over empowered. I choose that was carefully. The central government is over empowered, and then of course, what it fits out to the state? Most of the state government will not even allow the local government system to actually benefit substantially. So the local government system has to be captured in. So if the state, if at the end of the day, because we're being careful now because the matter is in court, if at the end of the day the VAT collection resides with the state government, what happens to the local government? Because presently the local government tend to benefit from the centrally collected VAT. But we need to have a system in place where the constitution has to be given life. What do I mean? A functional system will checkmate excesses. Because at the end of the day, look, these companies, by the time, even when we get a political solution where the federal government can take some VAT and then the state, for instance, and even the local government can take some start, we'll talk about this multiple taxation system. And then some of these foreign companies, let me dwell on that a bit. Some of these foreign companies will say that they have been overtaxed. Besides that, they are now empowered by the petroleum industry act to do corporate social responsibility so that they can have a viable environment to operate from. So the multiple taxation system has to be looked into. That is why I'm still of the opinion that the treaty of government should have a platform where this thing can be ironed out. Because sometimes we are practitioners, legal practitioners, give you the best platform. So you need to have some kind of working arrangement, some kind of a negotiation. Because my take is basically this. Now, why, particularly why Rivers, Lagos State, and some of these super states, in quotes, will substantially benefit from VAT collection because they consume more, while other states don't. Some other states virtually consume nothing, and they just wait for the benefit thereof. So what will be the solution to these states? As a consumer, they should be given the lion's share so that other states will be more creative. That has been my hallmark of this argument this afternoon. But having said that, the local government has to be captured. If we get the local government system right, what are the bylaws that empower the local government to collect tax? Maybe now it's just to collect bicycle. Remember that there's the radio license is obsolete. In those days, if you have a radio for you to operate, you have to pay tax to the local government system, to the local government. But now, what are those laws that enable the local government to benefit substantially from the tax regime? Because if you open a business, a small business unit, you pay the state tax, you pay the local government tax, and then sometimes even the local community where you operate. So the taxation system does not really favor the local government. That's why you have, in attempt to collect the tax from the public, they involve the touts that block the road, do all sorts of things to fiscally collect, and then substantially, this is a fact that I've found out, that this money is collected, not even get to the coffers of the local government or the state government. Most of these tax consultants, they will give you an account, and when you say this account, how do you remit this money back to the state? They say that is not your business. Your business is to pay. If these monies that are being collected, are they remitted back to the state or the coffers of the local government? I'm afraid, Chief, that is not the case. So when we don't have a system that checks these antics, a system that drain from the state coffers will be going around in circle.
Okay.
But I would say that I think the local government should be empowered, should be considered in the ongoing VAT war, because at the end of the day, if we don't get the local government system right, I'm afraid insecurity will persist. I'm not being optimistic, I'm not being pessimistic, but we need to get the local government system right, because that is the closest tier of government to the people.
All right.
And I keep saying that once we get the local government system right, including this the VAT controversy we're going to have, the local government should be contemplated. And where the state eventually collects this VAT, what is the utilization of it? How does a man at the local government benefit from the tax that are being collected? And that's why some people say, why would I pay tax when the roads are bad? There's lack of basic amenities in the community, where everybody now is virtually a government. As an individual, you are providing security for yourself, you are making roads for yourself, you are providing water, everything. So everybody in Nigeria virtually is a government unto himself.
Yes,
including the issue of security.
Yes,
providing paying vigilante and the rest.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ayogo.
At the moment, it's something drastic that we have to look at it politically.
Thank you so much. Your greater concern is with the welfare of people at the local government level. But Dr. Iwundu, you're going to have the last say here as we begin to round up our discussion here. A number of issues have been thrown on the table. For instance, why are revenues from VAT, as they are today, with the sharing formula of 35% to local governments, 15% to federal government, and 50% to the state government, why are they not tied to specific and measurable projects that can be seen to say, okay, this project is a product of VAT revenue, for instance? You know, that's on one side. On the other side is the suggestion that has been made by some people, the recommendation, that perhaps rather than go this route that the federal and state governments are going through now, this legal battle, we should sit down, negotiate, and maybe come to some hybrid arrangement, like the Indian example, where, for instance, which centralizes the collection of certain types of taxes, and other minor taxes are left for the states and local governments to collect. And that way, this could be resolved very easily.
Yeah. You know, just as you said, currently, the VAT being collected, FRS takes 4% cost of collection, and out of the remaining 96% that is left, federal government takes 15%, gives states 35%, and local government 15%. Now, I don't think bringing local government into collection of VAT will make it tidy. Just as I suggested, even if at the end of the day, the court ruled that is the state that will collect this VAT, the states can also deploy the services of FIRS who already have the data of those who are paying the VAT. And the structure. And the administrative efficiency to collect this VAT and take their 4% cost of collection and give back the state what they have collected in that state. So it's left for the state and local government to agree how much will the state take and how much will the local government take. That could be a political agreement. It becomes political now. Now, the point I'm making is that when revenues are collected and allocated to states, you no longer dictate how it should be done. It is the governor, his federal executive council, who sit and decide what to do in their state. That's why we are talking about our leadership recruitment process. Nigeria should begin to elect leaders who will get there and have a plan, a development plan on how to run their various states. Right now, so many governors in this country have no development plan of their states. What they do every month, they rush and share the revenue allocated from federal government and come back to Abuja and stay. There is no project in place in terms of this money we are receiving, we are tying into this project. So it is not for me and you or for an ordinary Nigerians to begin to decide how they are going to allocate the VAT revenue to a project. It goes back to the state governor and his executive councils and the state house assembly on if they generate this money from VAT, how would they use it to make sure that people in the state enjoy. That's all.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kennedy Iwundu, He's a tax expert, Vice Chairman, Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, TICN, the Abuja chapter. Thank you so much for finding time to join us in the studio.
Thank you very much.
And we were also joined by Mr. Leonard Ayongo, who is a lawyer. He joined us from Calabar in Cross River State. Thank you so much. And Dr. Ken Koha is a lawyer and economist and president, National Association of Nigerian Traders, NANTS, who also joined us virtually from Lagos. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and for making your contributions to this all-important issue. And for you, our viewers out there, we want to thank you for investing your time with us, and we look forward to being with you again. We'll bring you a fresh edition of People, Politics.